What's up in the loop? It's Hyde coming at you from the top of the world's tallest building here in United Arab Emirates, Dubai. Well, actually, let me back up for a second. I am not actually in Dubai anymore. This video is filmed a year and a half ago, but there I am in the sand, and I have a very special friend with me today, someone I went to Dubai with, Bryan, right there. What's up, Bryan?
Hey, it's me jumping in the desert.
I know he told, and there's Ranger. Ranger came with us. The guy. We'll get to the desert safari where we took these photos in a little bit. But essentially, Bryan, you didn't get to come on the podcast when we originally recorded our 4-hour marathon mini about a year or so ago. And we posted a lot of videos from the Dubai trip since, but there's a lot of clips we haven't posted, and I want to kind of put them in one video. And I'm also, now that it's been a year and a half, I want to do a little commentary, a little DVD commentary of some of the videos we have, some we don't have. And let's start from the beginning. Here we are. We flew from Orlando to Dubai directly, which is crazy that there's a direct flight. And it was a long flight, wasn't it?
It was a really long flight. I came from California the day before to Orlando, so it was an even longer flight for me. But it was a fun flight, as fun as flights can be. Emirates Airlines is a fantastic airline. They had tons of movies. They had tons of entertainment. Food was good. And we got a screaming deal.
Yeah, we got a really good deal. And the flight wasn't supposed to be that full, but the day before there was a huge storm in the Northeast. So it's my row was filled with people who were supposed to fly from New York to Dubai, but those flights were canceled. So they flew down to Florida to catch the flight over. And you can see here, we went all the way over Europe. That's the entire, you see Italy on the right-hand side of the screen there. We went all the way across the European continent. And then you start going over the Middle East. And I mean, we left Orlando at 1 p.m. Orlando time, landed in Dubai at noon the following day. And I think it was pretty much dark to about we got over Turkey, and the last couple hours were light. And man, like you said, it was a cozy flight. Wasn't horrible, but I mean, it was probably 12 hours. And I had to throw this clip in here too. Like you said, they had so many movies. They had literally, this was pre-Disney Plus, but it was basically Disney Plus because they had every movie you could think of, every Disney movie from Marvel to the anime classics were on there.
And not just American movies. They had tons of Bollywood movies, Chinese language movies, all sorts of different types of movies too, since it's obviously an international carrier.
Yeah, and the Bollywood movies will come in handy later on when we talk about a certain attraction. But yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. They do follow a kind of a unique flight pattern to kind of go through the Middle East, so they don't go over some of those hotbeds. That right there, what you're seeing, poor filming, but that is Iran. I thought that's kind of neat that we flew somewhat near Iran-ish. But yeah, the flight plan does kind of take you around, purposely kind of go around Iraq and I think a little bit of some other areas. But here's landing in Dubai, and I didn't get much sleep on the flight, but I think we were ready to go. We hit the ground running when we got to Dubai. And let's jump to our first park here, Motiongate. This is Dubai Parks and Resort, which is probably a half hour outside Dubai proper, the city.
Yeah, it was a 30-40 minute cab ride.
And I do apologize to you, Bryan, in advance. The video you folks are seeing at home will be polished and stabilized and all this, but this is just the raw footage Bryan and I are looking at right now. And it is super shaky and non-edited. But Motiongate, for the people at home, it has a lot of great stuff. We'll kind of go cover a few of the attractions. But what was your initial reaction? This was the first park of the trip.
It was the first park of the trip, and honestly, I think none of us really had any expectations at this point. But just walking into the park and seeing the level of detail and seeing kind of how big and grand everything was really interesting. And I think we were nervous upon seeing the crowds at Motiongate as we walked in the gates, but
there was no one there.
There was no one there. This is social distancing before it was cool.
We got Copperhead Strike 1.0 here, Hunger Games roller coaster. That was pretty good. Pretty good. That was you and Ranger making a cameo in the front seat of the ride there, all by yourself.
The only people on the train. Yeah, it was a fun ride. Our first coaster of the trip as well. So we had no idea what to expect when it came to operations, when it came to, would they let us on with our glasses? Would they let us on with loose articles, anything
Yeah.
like that? So this was kind of the test.
And then
Test
they
ride.
did have this whole Hunger Games area, and then the other ride was the aerial tour, which was a kind of horrible simulator. The line was really cool. It was really detailed, but moving on, DreamWorks. This is where it's at. Tell the people kind of what DreamWorks is all about here.
DreamWorks is essentially a theme park in its own inside of a box. There's four different realms inside. There's Madagascar, there's Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, and How to Train Your Dragon. And as you're walking in,
This was incredible. Like this,
I love this
this
fountain
looks like
that's on
something.
demand.
Yeah, man, this looked like something straight out of like the Bellagio or something in Vegas.
Like Shrek hanging out in the clouds, looking down on you.
And like the
Uh,
floors are all like polished and sparkly.
it's spotless.
And then, so let's start with Shrek. So this area, I thought it was pretty good. The main
This is one of
attraction,
my favorites of the trip.
yeah. I mean, so you had like the little ride there, but the main thing was the Shrek ride. And what was really interesting about the Shrek ride is they made all the animatronics. I'll have a clip here coming up in a second that kind of shows this. But they made all the animatronics kind of look like puppets, which was a great way to cheat because then the animatronics didn't have to have fluid movements. They didn't have to spend money on these super advanced animatronics. They just had to make them kind of bobble around because they were puppets. You can kind of see that right there. It still looked really great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a faithful retelling, and it was a really long attraction as well.
Yeah.
Like a lot of some of the dark rides that you'll see in the States will be a retelling of, a classic story, and then they'll just kind of like cut out a lot. But all the rides here that were retellings really like took the whole story, put it in there. They
Yeah.
just have the space to do a, 10-minute dark ride.
Yeah. And moving on to
Madagascar.
Madagascar. This was they had a Eurofighter here that was really cool. Remember, it launched you straight into the dark, like pitch black because it's all inside, and it was this launch Eurofighter that launched you into a couple turns, and then the biggest hill and drop of it wasn't until like halfway through the ride.
Yeah, it was really cool, and we also hadn't looked at a lot of
Yeah,
POVs
we
or
had no
read up
idea.
on most of these attractions.
We had no idea what
So
kind of coaster this was until we got into the station. We go, oh, it's a Eurofighter or Infinity Coaster or whatever kind of ride.
yeah, moving on to How to Train Your Dragon. This truly was, I
Oh
think, the
man, this
the
might
gem of the park.
maybe and even maybe one of the trip too.
The scale of this section of the park, because you walk in and you're essentially on level 2, and there's a whole like children's water playground and a Viking swinging ship ride that are beneath you, and the entrance to the Mac, was it a 40 coaster, or powered dark ride style coaster, is kind of on that middle level, and then the coaster goes above. So there's just so much going on. I think in this clip here, you can see the most people
No, the
in
entire
pretty much the
the whole
whole
park.
park.
Yeah, and there's no since it's so dark in here, there's no good photos or videos. I kept trying to find it one. This kind of pans around and shows you a little bit of the area. But just they did such a great job with forced perspective of putting like smaller trees on top of these rocks and the buildings, and you can kind of see those tall supports that kind of look like columns in the back there. That's for the coaster. But yeah, here's what you're talking about: the kids play area that's kind of on like level 1, and you're already on level 2 when you walk in through that tunnel there. But this is just, I don't even like How to Train Your Dragon. Like, here's the cars for the ride. I never saw the movies, but it just blew me away when you're on this coaster thing and the sets are 2 stories tall and you're kind of flying over these sets.
Yeah, I was so blown away just by everything that was in this space. Um, Truly, like we walked in here, and I think we walked in and started in the Kung Fu Panda, and then just kind of like found our way into this space. But just all of the approaches into each of the different lands is just so well done.
Yeah, and then leaving Dream. Hey, there you are. You're making a little cameo here.
Yeah,
There's
my toaster nerd strap on.
this park just had so many dark rides, including the Smurfs, which had some funny posters in the queue. And then this was a your it's kind of standard dark ride, but I wanted to include it. It was I don't know much about the Smurfs, but had a lot of animatronics and just your typical kind of cartoony looking dark ride. And I thought it was pretty good for what it was.
Yeah, and keep in mind, all of these dark rides are trackless. This one absolutely didn't need to be trackless, but it was because why not?
Yeah, it
I
was
think of
funny.
all the dark rides, this may have been one of the more forgettable ones.
Yeah,
Just on a like, if this were here in the States, this would be, ranked among some of the most beloved dark rides, but because it's amongst so many of these,
yeah.
it kind of
Going
gets
into the
lost.
trip, trackless was such a cool thing. By like day two, we're like, we've been on like five trackless rides. And speaking of trackless, here's another one. What is Transylvania? Hotel Transylvania. And this was really interesting. You can kind of see it here. The ride mainly takes place in this one area, like this one long corridor here. And you just pop in and out of these little like caves off to the side. So it's like all the vehicles kind of just meander around this central area and then you pop in and out, which was kind of neat. But the one thing I didn't care for is there's no element of surprise because you pull into this room, you see all the rooms you're going to pop into, and it's just not as much fun. This is the ending right here. But what did you think overall of this ride?
My main complaint with it was just the speed. It was an incredibly slow moving ride, and I think that kind of hurt some of the storytelling abilities of it. But here we are at Wild Adventures in Valdosta, Georgia.
Wow, yeah. Hey, it's funny. They like literally built it to look the same. So Ghostbusters, this was a ride that got a lot of hate online when it first opened for not being that great, and it's probably the weakest of the dark rides there because it is mainly a lot of screens. But I still thought it was a pretty decent ride. Like it was really cool to walk through the queue and kind of see the kind of the famous scenes and like walk into the firehouse thing. But overall, I mean, I thought I thought it was a pretty fun ride.
Yeah, I mean, again, if this were here in the States, at a Six Flags or a Cedar Fair Park or something like that, this would be like as well loved as the Justice League rides. But again, because it's in, a place that just has so many amazing dark rides and amazing themed attractions, it just kind of gets lost. But I had a great time on it.
Yeah. So pulling out of the parks for a second, we stayed at the Lapida Hotel that is on site. Basically, like their version of like kind of the Polynesian hotel. I thought it was a really nice hotel. It is a Marriott Starwood property, I believe. But what did you think?
This is one of my favorite hotels of the trip. And I frankly wish we had more time here
Yeah.
to spend. It's such a beautiful property, and believe it or not, in Dubai, it was slightly too cold for the pools. I think it
Yeah,
was
I know
like,
because you look at there. There's like a lazy river built in. I enjoyed a nice drink by the pool. But yeah, it was a little too cold, and that's one where it's like, yeah, because we literally like checked in, went to the parks. We're at the parks till closing. Crashed, and the next morning immediately woke up and ran through the parks real fast, and then drove down to another set of parks. But just kind of showing off the room here with Ranger. Yeah, I mean, it was really nice. Not only was it my favorite hotel of the trip, it was by far the nicest room as well. We had a view of the Riverland shopping district, and we'll show you that a little bit more in
and
a
the
sec.
construction.
The construction, I don't really know what they were doing, but
I mean, that's the whole kind of like Dubai Parks and Resorts really still kind of had a sense of
mhm.
not quite being done yet. And I think you'll cut to a major construction project here in a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
But for Dubai Parks and Resorts, this is absolutely somewhere I think if you're gonna do it, stay on property, do it right.
Yeah,
Like in
absolutely.
in addition to, getting a nice hotel room, I think part of our package we also got those
Like skip the line
we got
passes.
like skip the line passes, which we didn't need,
No.
and meal credits and
Yeah, it was a
and all sorts of.
really good deal. Don't be fooled. Like, I mean, this room is at least Disney Deluxe quality, and I think we pay like 150 or $200 a night. So it wasn't anything super expensive. So yeah, do yourself a favor. Dubai Parks and Resorts out in the middle of nowhere. There is nothing nearby. And it is a little bit of a hike from if you're staying in Dubai or if you're staying down in Abu Dhabi, about probably a half hour from either. So it just makes more sense just to park yourself there and be located where you can. It's very similar like Universal in Orlando, where you can just walk right to the parks and stuff, and you can see like, yeah, I mean, this is a really nice hotel here. So there's Ranger. Hey, Ranger.
Look at the quality of that toilet.
Yeah, high quality stuff. But yeah, I mean, definitely recommend staying here, and we'll pop over to the Riverland area here in a second. And the whole resort and complex, is the three, it is very, like I said, a lot like Universal Orlando, where you have the parks attached kind of through a city walk area. And the city walk area here, there was like a couple distinct areas of it themed wise. And this was like the French Village, I think is what it's called. Yep, right there. And I mean, it was very well themed. I mean, this looked better than a Disney Springs or better than a City Walk. Just look at how like detailed some of those buildings are.
Yeah, I think the setup, kind of the beginning of going into the parks and everything like that, just so well. It's such a great way to start getting immersed in those environments.
Yeah,
And there were still quite a few empty storefronts.
quite a bit.
The restaurants and some of the establishments that were open had some unusual hours. So, for example, in the morning, the only place we can find to get
Yeah,
a cup of coffee and something to eat was the
I
McDonald's.
know. Yeah, well, before the park, we got the parks open at 10 or 11, and we were at 10 o'clock. We were trying to get a bite to eat, and McDonald's was the only thing open, and then last stuff to even open for lunch. But I mean, you had everything there. You had everything from an Olive Garden to I think a Shake Shack. I don't think that was
Well,
open
the
yet.
Shake Shack was coming soon
Soon
or had recently
closed.
closed.
Yeah, there's a cheesecake factory because there's cheesecake factories everywhere. Here is my little memorial. This is the Six Flags Dubai construction site. Now, as you can see here, it's
Opening in 2019.
2019. Yeah, I mean, actually, literally about a week or a week and a half after we got back from our Dubai trip, and I filmed this video, the project officially was put on hold. You can see it was supposed to open that same year, and they barely had any footers, and there was no construction move. And here's kind of one of the other areas, like more Mediterranean area, Riverland there, and then Bollywood. This is the park like we knew very little about, and we were very much out of our element. No coasters, no real rides, just simulators. But man, it looked beautiful, and we went in there going, this is going to just be kind of a walk in, get some food, and get out. Use our dining credits. But I think we all walked out going. We were all texting each other because we were all kind of doing separate things, and we're like, "Oh my god, you gotta go ride this ride! You gotta go ride this ride! This is just crazy awesome." So
I mean,
this is the park you
just
love to,
looking at,
yeah,
yeah, just looking at as you're walking in, just the amount of theming, the amount of like unique details uh, of this park. It's so beautiful, and
yeah,
I think you captured this at the perfect time as well,
yeah,
right when
like
all the lighting is
golden
starting to come
hour,
on. Yeah, it's such a beautiful park.
yeah,
And you can see on the side here, all of those are like food and snack stands.
yeah,
You can just get like a
lots of
quick
food,
bite.
yeah,
But this is the Raj Mahal. This is their primary main like
show
theater.
venue,
This is
yep,
like a couple thousand people venue. It unfortunately was closed while we were there.
yep,
So we weren't able to see their big show. But each I think now we're on in Don the Chase
Don the
Land.
Chase, yes, yes. So this is like their version of like a James Bond, but I guess he's a bad guy. So that's the thing is like we knew none of this. Like, but Don the Chase apparently is uh like a multi-part movie series that's huge in the Bollywood area. And
My guess is it's like the Fast and Furious. And
Furious,
I would
yeah.
say this attraction was better than Fast and
Oh
Furious.
yes, and then so that was the interesting thing is like it would be like if you went to like Hollywood Studios at Disney World and knew zero of the IPs. That's basically what we were coming into here. And this is one where you text me like, dude, you gotta go on Krish. And I was like, well, I don't know what Krish is. Go on it. And go watch the video of Bollywood, learn a lot more about it. And this is where we're just raving on it. But Krish, man, Krish. What a ride. It's a flight simulator. But can you describe to the people in like 10 seconds, summarize this ride? I don't even know how you could.
So Krish is a superhero in India. He created a museum to himself that is in a statue of himself on an island. You access it via a gondola. The gondola gets struck by lightning. Krish shows up and saves you. Then he takes you to his magical land where he runs with his friend the horse.
Yes.
And then aliens show up, and Krish saves you from the aliens. And then he puts you back on the gondola, and you go and you finally get to see his island museum in a statue of himself. And the gondola operator is just like, was it all a dream?
Dun, dun,
That's
dun.
the ride.
And that's like boom, mic drop, show over. It's just such a weird, crazy thing. But oh man, was it glorious. Like we didn't know what to expect. There's just so many questions. Like, why are you operating a gondola ride when there's lightning? Like we both worked in operations. Like you don't do that. You don't operate rides, especially a sky ride. Those things go down if it's 2-mile-per-hour winds, let alone a thunderstorm. Why has Krish letting that happen?
Yeah, and this was
So
also
many
before
questions.
the big Skyliner accident.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yes, Krish but Krish is there's what like 3 or 4 Krish movies out there, and they're huge. And you actually watched this is what we were talking about earlier. You actually watched one on the flight back, I believe, because it was on the in-flight entertainment.
No, it was not on the in-flight
Oh, it
entertainment.
was you
I
when
had
you got
to,
back
I had
to
to get it
home.
on Amazon Prime
There it is.
when I got home.
That was you right there going.
This is me describing.
Yeah,
It was all a
the
dream.
Boom, mic drop.
Yeah, I live tweeted watching the movie while I got progressively drunker and drunker. And the cameo I remember was seeing a Black Eyed Peas poster.
This is this was like a Western kind of like a Indiana Jones character Cholet that had their own dark ride. I just remember it kind of being most of the stuff here was very not politically correct. Like a lot of stuff you wouldn't see in U.S. movies, or even like the attractions, like quite violent. Like Don the Chase was quite violent. I remember this one was being quite violent as well. So the third park at
Speaking of violence,
Legoland, there's really no way to be violent at Legoland because you can count what 3 people in this shot, and this is at rope drop. This is this is us rope dropping Legoland like a minute or 2 after it opened. There's no one there.
yeah, we were the only people in the park for the entirety of our stay in the park, which
Yeah. Almost like an
admittedly
hour.
was an hour and a half.
Let's point out, it is covered. A lot, not all the park is covered, but a majority of it was kind of covered. And Bollywood, actually is open later hours. Like I think like 5 to like 11 or something to try to combat the heat. But Miniland here is all inside under the giant dome, which was nice. Wasn't too hot when we were there. This is the Burj Khalifa reenacting kind of the famous Mission Impossible scene. That tower there is what, probably 50 feet tall at least.
Yeah, I mean it's enormous scale. There was like this fountain show beneath it that actually worked.
Yeah.
Just like any typical mini land, there's so many moving parts and kind of in gags and things
Well,
like that.
and I think that was the interesting thing too, is just Dubai with all the crazy skyscrapers, lended itself really well to a mini land, like that famous hotel, the Sail Hotel right there. Like that's really cool versus some mini lands I've been to where like it's just like, oh, here's the skyline of Tampa, and you're like, it's a bunch of buildings. And speaking of tall buildings, Burj Khalifa, we started the video with a view from the top, world's tallest building. And it also is, I still believe, the world's tallest observation tower. And then we went up to the top. This is kind of the elevator here that did took what, like 60 seconds to get to 124 floors or something.
Yeah, which was insane, and it didn't feel like it was moving at all. I mean, halfway up at some point, I think
Yeah.
my ears popped, but
Yeah.
like literally, you just sit in this elevator, and all of a sudden you're at 124 or 125.
Yeah, it's doing like
Um,
these cool like light show in there with the video, there's a little error in the video here, so it's not your computer that froze, it's just a video that is freezing. I promise I'll come back in a second. Hey, there you are. And yeah, I mean, it just kind of, and it's like pumping up music, getting you all like if you watch the actual video of this on our channel, you'll actually hear the music and see the whole experience here. And then it's like boom, lights. Now you can go up to, I think, like the 140th floor, but that was like $50 more. And we're like, we're going to be high enough up 120 stories. We don't need to spend $50 more to go up a few more stories. But the interesting thing, I don't know if you thought this, but it didn't feel that high up simply because every other building nearby is super tall as well.
yeah, that's kind of the thing that was, I think, the most. I don't want to say disappointing. Nothing about it was disappointing, but it was definitely the most shocking. Was like you don't feel the building swaying or moving. You don't feel that high up, but again, in any other city in the U.S., the building right in front of you there would be the tallest of the skyline.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the thing is like when they talk about like all those buildings you see right there, like that'd be like the New York skyline right there. But but they look small, and they did a light show every night on the side of the building. And they have huge fountains in front of it. I mean, the fountains are, I think, like twice the size of Bellagio fountains, and this is all free. It's connecting to a shopping mall, so I think it's a way of them trying to get you to spend money, stay there and spend money. But really cool fountain show. What did you think of Burj Khalifa overall?
I had a great time. I think you spent a little more time than I did. I didn't see the light show.
No.
I went drinking at Trader Vic's instead.
There you go. This is the craziest thing we did. Yeah, we got in back of
Dude, we got airtime on that hill.
This video, it's shaky, but it's real. We knew that we were going to go dune bashing, where they're going to take us out on the sand dunes, and like drive us around. But when they showed up to our hotel, just with like a Ford Explorer or something, we thought, okay, like we're just going to switch to a dune buggy or something when we get closer. Nope. They literally took this, and you can see in the van there, it's reinforced for when it rolls over, because they said it rolls over quite a bit. We got stuck at one point, but yeah, I mean, and there was like no seatbelts in this thing, and we were flying and bouncing around like crazy. And then like you just come up on camels, like dune bashing was insane.
Yeah, that was definitely I think the highlight of sort of, unique cultural things.
Yeah.
Like, can't do that here.
Well, and I remember watching Theme Park Worldwide on YouTube's video, and they're like, yeah, dune bashing was crazy, but it was a little too much for me. I was like, oh, wimps. And then we went dune bashing. After like 10 minutes, I was like, this could be done. I'm kind of, those are the cars we went dune bashing in right there. I'm like, I could be done with this now. But it was a part of a multi like kind of experience where we did dune bashing, and they took us out into the middle of nowhere here. You saw a little bit of the camel rides. We'll get more of that in a second. But then we got to go sandboarding, and here's a little hot POV action. This is when you sit on the board and they push you down backwards. I mean, it's like going sledding. Like it's a sledding hill, probably like 30 or 40 feet tall, but It's still pretty cool. Go sandboarding in the old desert here. Um,
I think the worst part of this was having to walk all the way back up
oh
and
yeah, because it
getting
was
all of that sand in your
oh,
shoes.
and it was hard too. It was like snow, like where you're like falling through the snow. Oh, there you are. That's standing up, and
Oh,
ooh, that hurt.
it
Uh,
actually didn't hurt that much, but
no, because it's
my,
sand.
my pride was hurt.
No, I like this better than snowboarding because when you're snowboarding, it's cold outside, and we actually snowboarded a few days later.
Yeah.
Then they took us to this little oasis right there you see in the back there. Like literally in the middle of nowhere, they had like that little like photo op, and they gave us drinks and stuff. And then we got to ride camels.
Yeah, the camel rides I think were what I was least expecting a camel ride to be.
Yeah, it
You can
was.
see how kind of violent it
Oh,
is.
it is
Just to,
super.
to try and get like to mount the camel, and
It
then
like
there,
flips you up, and
yeah, little camel POV here.
yeah, and it was it. I think we were both a little bit disappointed when they initially told us like oh yeah, the camels, like we're going to put you on the camel. It'll take you maybe 100 yards out. We'll turn around and come back, and we're like, oh, this is supposed to be like the highlight here, and we're just going on the camels for like 3 minutes, or 5 minutes tops. But that was probably like
Yeah,
4 minutes.
that was
Plenty
kind
of
of enough. Yeah.
yeah. You didn't want to be in it. You didn't want to be on them. They're not comfortable at all, and they are not graceful at any sense of the word.
Nope.
So here's something a little interesting as well. We're ending the video here near Abu Dhabi, and we went to this giant mosque. And I wanted to show this because I think a lot of people who are planning a trip to the area might just write this off. But this was an incredible experience. Obviously very religious, and a lot of kind of strict rules you have to follow about it. But it was free to enter, right?
It was free to enter. You have to register, give them your country of origin, your name, a few other personal information details. You get a boarding group slip. But when we went, it was maybe a 5 or 10 minute wait
Yep.
to get through. There's certain entrances for certain activities. So if you're actually going to the
pray.
church to pray, you go through a different entrance. If you're just going to visit and take pictures, you go a different way.
Yep. And so that puts us right. A little teaser here. Right after the mosque, we drove up the road, and we were at Yaz Island here with Skyrush. I mean, the Flying Aces, and then we went to WB as well. And that basically wraps up the video here. This is part one. We'll come back to you with part two and talk all about Flying Aces, WB, and everything else at well, let's see. Part two will be Ferrari World. Will be WB. We'll go snowboarding. We just went sandboarding. We'll go snowboarding. We'll go to the crazy Yas Water World water park. Global Village, which is like Epcot on steroids. IMG. We got a lot more stuff to cover in part two there.
So keep it tuned here to In the Loop on YouTube and Instagram.
In the Loop podcast
I'll let
on
you
Instagram.
do all the shameless plugs.
Yeah, In the Loop podcast on Instagram. So thanks for watching.